The economic tug-of-war between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada is heating up, with Claudia Sheinbaum emerging as a key figure in Mexico's response. In this series, we explore the shifting trade dynamics and Sheinbaum's role in shaping the region's future. Stay tuned for the latest insights on Baby Eagle. The economic friction between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. The economic relationship between the United States, Mexico, and Canada has become an ongoing issue, creating tensions and potentially driving the emergence of new political leaders. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has risen as a key figure in this dynamic. She has taken bold steps to oppose the U.S., such as postponing U.S. sanctions and retaliating with similar measures. However, Sheinbaum's actions also show that she did not entirely dismiss peaceful solutions. She tried to engage former President Donald Trump to resolve the tensions but received no response, which could have far-reaching consequences for Mexico's economy. The high tariffs imposed by the U.S. could inadvertently spark an industrial revolution in Mexico. While they may threaten Mexico's economic stability, these tariffs could encourage the country to seek new economic strategies and explore alternative markets. Instead of relying on the U.S. market, Mexico might diversify its trade relations, reducing its dependence on the U.S. economy and opening up new growth opportunities. Mexico and Canada, both having strong trade relations with regions like the Atlantic and Pacific, could begin shifting their economic focus. This could lead to the development of a more independent economic model, reducing reliance on the U.S. and creating new pathways for economic growth in the region. Mexico achieves a diplomatic victory. Mexico recently secured a diplomatic victory after months of tension surrounding the threat of tariffs from the U.S. under President Donald Trump. The highly anticipated tariffs, which were intended to penalize Mexico for immigration issues, were unexpectedly postponed, much to the relief of the Mexican public. This victory came as a result of hard-nosed negotiations led by Claudia Sheinbaum, a rising political star in Mexico. Sheinbaum, with her fiery speeches and strong leadership, has become a symbol of resilience for many Mexicans, especially after rallying public sentiment with her declaration, "We won against Trump." The victory was not only symbolic, but also marked a significant diplomatic achievement in what had been an ongoing and high-stakes trade conflict. However, the postponement of these tariffs raises the question, why did the Trump administration, which had seemed steadfast in its threat, back down at the last minute? The answer lies in a combination of factors, primarily the threat of retaliatory measures from Mexico. Sheinbaum and her team effectively leveraged Mexico's strong economic position and diplomatic alliances to deter the U.S. from proceeding with the tariffs. They also capitalized on the U.S. need for cooperation on issues like border security and trade, which made it difficult for the Trump administration to maintain an aggressive stance. Behind the scenes, intense negotiations took place between the two governments, with both sides seeking a way to de-escalate the situation. Mexico's strong negotiating position, its economic leverage, and international support played a critical role in altering the trajectory of the tariff talks. Sheinbaum's diplomatic skill and ability to rally both domestic and international support were pivotal in securing this diplomatic win. Now, as the dust settles, both countries will likely look to build upon this unexpected turn of events. Mexico will likely push for a fairer trade deal, while the U.S. may need to reconsider its approach to international relations, especially with its trade partners. This moment will shape the future of North American diplomacy for years to come. Trump's tariffs and Mexico's economic response. Donald Trump's proposals to impose substantial tariffs on Mexican products were part of a broader strategy to protect U.S. domestic markets and curb immigration. The potential tariffs would target a wide range of Mexican exports, from auto parts and electronics to textiles and agricultural products. Given that the U.S. is Mexico's largest trading partner, accounting for over 80% of Mexico's exports, These tariffs posed a significant threat to the Mexican economy, potentially pushing it into recession. The tariff threats were not merely economic measures, they were also politically charged. Trump's administration often framed the tariffs as a response to Mexico's immigration policies, particularly the flow of migrants across the southern U.S. border. Trump made it clear that, in his view, Mexico would need to curb immigration to avoid severe economic penalties. In the face of this pressure, Claudia Sheinbaum, a prominent and powerful political figure from Mexico City, took center stage. Sheinbaum's response to the potential tariffs was resolute. She declared that Mexico would not tolerate such measures, and if the U.S. followed through, Mexico would retaliate with similar tariffs. Unlike the personal attacks from Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Sheinbaum maintained a more composed and diplomatic tone. Sheinbaum indicated that Mexico would not act impulsively, choosing instead to exhaust all diplomatic channels before taking any retaliatory actions. In a large rally, she spoke directly to her supporters, emphasizing that Mexico would not surrender to external pressure. There is no surrender. Mexico is a great country, and Mexicans are brave and resilient, she said, instilling a sense of national pride. The rally was also a show of solidarity, with thousands of Mexicans waving flags and holding signs, reinforcing the message that the country's sovereignty and dignity were non-negotiable. During the rally at Mexico City's iconic Zocalo Square, Sheinbaum outlined that Mexico's response would be measured, utilizing both tariff and non-tariff measures. However, she refrained from announcing specific actions, including retaliatory tariffs, until a key event later in the week. She stressed the importance of diplomacy, stating, "Debate and respect are key to ending U.S. tariffs." Sheinbaum's remarks also touched on the historical relationship between the U.S. and Mexico, which has been marked by both cooperation and conflict. She reminded the crowd that while there were many moments of hostility, there were also periods of collaboration and mutual understanding. In this context, she framed Mexico's response as one that would always protect the country's sovereignty and interests. The breakthrough came 2 days later when President Trump, after a phone conversation with Sheinbaum, announced that Mexico would not face tariffs on any products covered by the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, until April 2nd, a gesture of respect from the U.S. towards Mexico. Sheinbaum celebrated the positive outcome, acknowledging that the dialogue with the U.S. had been respectful so far, and she hoped it would continue. She ended her speech with a note of caution, reminding the public that while they had achieved a temporary victory, they should remain vigilant and prepared for future challenges. In the end, Sheinbaum's leadership, diplomacy, and careful balancing of national pride and economic interests were key to Mexico's success in fending off the immediate threat of tariffs. Her ability to maintain composure in the face of pressure, while also standing firm on key issues, highlighted her growing influence in both Mexican politics and international diplomacy. The U.S. response and Sheinbaum's diplomacy. Claudia Sheinbaum's approach to the U.S. tariff threats is a blend of strategic diplomacy and pragmatism. Recognizing Mexico's strong economic dependence on the U.S., with over 75% of its exports going to its northern neighbor, Sheinbaum called for a calm and measured response. In a February media briefing, she explained that Mexico should not overreact to Trump's threats, but instead prioritize diplomatic efforts to resolve the issue. This careful balance reflects the reality that any disruption in the U.S.-Mexico trade relationship could significantly harm Mexico's economy, as seen in the $50.5 billion worth of goods the U.S. imports from Mexico annually. However, Sheinbaum also made it clear that Mexico would not accept unfair trade practices and could seek new trading partners if necessary. This included the possibility of forming alliances outside the U.S. to diversify Mexico's economic relations and reduce reliance on a single market. Her suggestion to engage with countries like Canada, which also relies heavily on U.S. trade, highlights her awareness of global economic dynamics and the importance of flexibility in international relations. By balancing respect for Mexico's sovereignty with the need to protect its economy, Sheinbaum showed a pragmatic approach to the situation. While standing firm against the tariff threat, she emphasized diplomacy and a strategic shift toward building new trade alliances, positioning Mexico to remain resilient in a changing global trade environment. Sheinbaum's diplomatic success and its aftermath. Claudia Sheinbaum's strategy of diplomatic engagement and readiness to retaliate seems to be paying off, although it's still early to fully assess its effectiveness. The Trump administration recently exempted car manufacturers from the 25% tariff for a month, a decision that particularly benefits Mexico. This exemption is crucial as vehicles, auto parts, and trucks make up 27% of Mexico's exports to the U.S., compared to Canada's 13%. While the full impact of Sheinbaum's approach remains to be seen, this temporary reprieve suggests that her strategy of standing firm and demonstrating readiness to retaliate is having an influence. Sheinbaum's popularity is also a key factor in her success. Since assuming office in October, she has garnered significant support, with approval ratings of 80% and 85% in February polls. Her rise to prominence as a left-wing, scientific, and creative leader has made her a highly respected figure in Mexican politics. As mayor of Mexico City, her focus on social justice and eloquent leadership as a woman in power helped her build a reputation that resonates strongly with the Mexican people. Sheinbaum's response to Trump's tariff threats has been clear and resolute. She called the tariffs an insult to national honor and pledged that Mexico would retaliate if the measures were imposed. This bold stance was met with widespread support from the Mexican public. When the U.S. announced the 25% tariff on all vehicle parts from Mexico in early 2025, Sheinbaum quickly mobilized a response, bringing together manufacturers, civil society, and the Ministry of Foreign Relations. Mexico's retaliatory measures were outlined, targeting U.S. imports of avocados, tomatoes, alcohol, steel, and other agricultural products, key areas where the U.S. relies heavily on Mexican exports. Sheinbaum's leadership, coupled with her clear response to U.S. trade threats, has solidified her position as a rising political figure in Mexico. Her strategic balance of diplomacy, economic protectionism, and public support positions her as a strong contender for Mexico's presidency in the future. U.S. decision to postpone the tariff. The Trump administration's decision to postpone the tariff decision, as reported on March 10, 2025, created a significant stir in both the U.S. and Mexico. Official White House statements confirmed that tariffs were temporarily suspended, with the potential for the next phase of tariffs to be indefinitely delayed. This development sparked immense joy and pride in Mexico, as the country saw it as a diplomatic victory. Claudia Sheinbaum, who had been a vocal critic of the tariffs, proudly declared, "We defended our national pride, we refused to back down, we played the revenge card and got results," celebrating Mexico's successful diplomatic efforts. In Mexico, the news was met with widespread enthusiasm, with many viewing it as a clear win for Sheinbaum's leadership and strategy. Sheinbaum's firm stance, coupled with her willingness to impose retaliatory tariffs, played a crucial role in pressuring the U.S. to back down. The Mexican media heralded this as a major diplomatic achievement, with Sheinbaum being credited for standing strong in the face of economic threats. On the U.S. side, some observers believed that the Trump administration's decision to postpone the tariffs reflected a reluctance to engage in a full-fledged trade war with Mexico. The U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, negotiations had already been contentious, and giant automakers in the U.S. had warned that imposing tariffs would disrupt production, as many of their supply chains rely heavily on Mexican factories. This economic reality likely played a role in the Trump administration's decision to reconsider the tariff imposition, as it would have hurt both countries economically. Trump had made his intentions clear in the past. He wanted to send a strong message to his supporters, particularly regarding immigration and trade. However, the economic implications of tariffs were far-reaching, especially in the automotive and manufacturing sectors, which are integral to both the U.S. and Mexico's economies. The postponement, therefore, can be seen as a strategic move to avoid a trade war that would have significant consequences for both nations. The impact of the tariff crisis and Sheinbaum's response. Claudia Sheinbaum's retaliation strategy against the U.S. tariffs was carefully calculated to target U.S. agricultural sectors in key states like Texas and California, where many Trump-supporting farmers are located. By hitting these areas, she aimed to apply economic pressure on President Trump, knowing that such a move could jeopardize his political base, particularly ahead of an election. This diplomatic maneuver placed Trump in a difficult position, as retaliatory tariffs on products like avocados, tomatoes, and other agricultural goods would cause significant losses for farmers in critical swing states. Although Sheinbaum was not the country's federal president, her influence within the ruling party, Morena, and her leadership in Mexico City made her a key player in the response to U.S. threats. Sheinbaum maintained a close relationship with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, AMLO, further strengthening her position within the government. This connection allowed her to act as a strong advocate for AMLO's administration, both domestically and on the international stage. When faced with the threat of tariffs, Sheinbaum emerged as one of the most vocal defenders of the Mexican government. She reaffirmed the country's commitment to peace and cooperation with its neighbors, but at the same time, she made it clear that Mexico would not tolerate what she considered unfair sanctions. Her diplomatic stance emphasized Mexico's sovereignty and readiness to respond to any unjust economic actions, reinforcing her position as a resilient and strategic leader. Through this measured and calculated approach, Sheinbaum showcased her diplomatic skills and political acumen. She positioned herself as not only a defender of Mexico's interests, but also as a strong, influential figure within the ruling party, capable of standing up to powerful external pressures while maintaining a commitment to peaceful diplomacy. Claudia Sheinbaum's diplomatic success in postponing the U.S. tariffs shows her ability to protect Mexico's interests. This victory strengthens her position as a future leader and highlights Mexico's need to balance economic ties with the U.S. and sovereignty. While the immediate threat is paused, Mexico's future path in global trade remains uncertain. If you found this insightful, don't forget to follow our channel and subscribe for more updates.